You're listening to the Good Food CFO podcast, where we focus on financial strategies for building a profitable food business. I'm your host, Sarah Delavan. We are celebrating Small Business Month all month long at the Good Food CFO podcast. And in between our regular bi-weekly episodes featuring the founders of good food brands, we've got bonus conversations with small business owners who are sharing a lesson learned or aha moment that changed the way they thought about, looked at, or operated within their business. In this bonus episode, I am joined by Ashely Sutterfield, founder and CEO of Sage Expert. Hey, Ashely, thank you so much for joining me on this bonus episode of the podcast. We're going to be talking about this business mind shift that you introduced me to in January. It has nothing to do with co-packing, but the moment you told me about it, I was like, what? This is genius. And I've been wanting to share it with as many people as possible ever since. So thank you for joining me here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sarah. I'm so excited to talk about this.
So as I mentioned in the podcast episode prior to this, Ashely and I have worked on multiple client projects together at this point, and we have a relationship that is, business based, and we talk about business in general and running our businesses. And we have that in common as solopreneurs who are growing our team and growing our brand in support of good food business owners. And Ashely, you do, I'm going to call them retreats, CEO retreats. How often do you do those, and what is typically your goal when you do it?
Yeah, I do a quarterly CEO retreat, and this really started in 2021 for me. And I took this time of like, let's step away on a regular basis to kind of zoom out on the business and get this perspective of like, where are we headed? Are we still in line with our brand values? How is the business growing? How is my role shifted? And I do these just to really refocus on that long-term strategy. And quarterly sounds frequent until you get 2.5 months into a quarter and you're like, I really need that next quarterly retreat to come. And so, yeah, this started as just a little getaway for myself to refocus on the business each quarter.
So you're not retreating in your own living room.
Right. It can be if you need to. But for me, I step away to just a little state park that's about 30 minutes from my home. And there's no Wi Fi or cell service, which doesn't have to be the case for anybody else considering this. But it's nice for me to step into nature and away from everything so that I can do some really deep thinking.
And so the standard day-to-day business operations sort of pauses for you, and you take the time to, as you said, like look ahead, zoom out on the business. So we had a virtual coffee date in January, I think it was, and you had mentioned this aha moment that occurred, and you had another CEO join you on your most recent retreat, and I believe that it kind of happened either together or through conversation with this person. So I'm so excited for you to, and you can give a little background if you want to, but I'm so excited for you to share what this like epiphany was for you.
Right. You're right. My friend Leanna, who's also a CEO of her business, joined me on this retreat. And this was really the first retreat that I had someone else along. I joke that my previous retreats had really been a silent retreat of me talking to myself for 3 days. And so it was really refreshing to have her there to be able to just talk through ideas. She's that type of friend and business owner that you can just reflect on things together and talk through. And this retreat in particular was in January, and we were both just feeling like overwhelmed by the fact that we were 2 or 3 weeks into January and just having our CEO retreat and like feeling behind because we're 3 weeks in. And we were just very flustered by this concept of like, why are we so far behind? And we were sitting around the campfire one night and, under the stars, just chatting. And all of a sudden it was like, she said, well, what would happen if we were ahead. And I was like, man, that would feel fantastic. And then all of a sudden I was like, man, why why can't we be ahead? Like, why do we have to start the quarter in January? And she was like, yeah, what would happen if we moved our quarter Q1 start to February? And for both of us, it was just this aha moment of like, oh, why can't we? We're the CEO of our businesses. Like, we can make that decision. And immediately there was this relief and pressure that was removed, and this expectation that we have to have everything buttoned up and ready to roll for the new year in December so that we can hit the ground running in January. And that's just not the season that I'm particularly in January. I'm still recovering from holidays with everyone, and just that season alone is, just a really full time of life. And that's wonderful, but I needed January to refocus and prepare for this coming year, and I just didn't feel like I was hitting the ground running with
Yeah.
this one. And so
Yeah.
that was kind of the mindset shift.
And it resonated with me for a couple of reasons. One, it's like, whose expectation is it that like everything should be ready and organized and, hitting the ground running on like January 1? Why can't we simply enjoy our December and whatever that means for us in our lives if we have family or, celebrations? Like, why does it have to be coupled with rushing ahead to the new year, right? I take 2 weeks off at the end of the year. So the last 2 weeks of December, I step away from work completely because personally, I celebrate my husband's birthday, I celebrate my wedding anniversary, and we celebrate the Christmas holiday with our friends. My husband works in the television industry. He doesn't get a lot of time off, and that's like a guaranteed time off for him. So that was something that we implemented a couple of years ago, and it's important for me to take that time. But if I'm using that time, which is meant for relaxing and re-energizing myself, and I have to think about and plan and get ready for the year ahead, I'm not doing what I'm intending during that 2 weeks off. So you presenting the idea of like just like doing all of that in January, I really liked. I had been talking to my community about reflecting and looking ahead like in the month of January, and I was sort of already doing that, but not specifically. And then the other thing was, you mentioned like the season of your business that you're in when January rolls around. And I thought, oh my goodness, like January is not quiet for us at Sarah Delavan Consulting. It's not quiet at the Good Food CFO. We typically are onboarding. We're interviewing new clients because it's the end of the year, beginning of the new year. People are excited about their finances and getting things like set up and ready for the new year. So our busiest season is like November, December, January, February. So you had said something in our conversation where you're like, why do I have to have new projects? Why do I have to be launching new things in January? And I was like, I can't even imagine launching anything new in January. There's simply no time for it.
Yeah, I think it just realizing like, oh, I can actually align my business with the seasonality of my business and of me personally. It just really gave me the permission I needed to wrap my mind around like, oh, okay, now I can envision the year ahead or the next quarter. Like, I was really being held back by that until that moment.
Yeah. Are you comfortable sharing sort of the themes of your quarters with everyone and sort of what your quarterly, I don't want to say quarterly plan, but what that looks like, what your year looks like in terms of your quarters?
Yeah, so we now start our quarters February through April is quarter one. And we call this spring planting. It really does start to align with the seasonality of the year. And so this is when we're planting seeds for future things. So, for instance, in Q1 of this year has been all about rebranding and a new brand voice and how we begin to speak more of the language of the clients that we work with. And then as we move into Q2, it's May through July, and this really aligns with summertime. This is actually one of our busiest times of year, and it's all around summer sprouting and realizing that this is a great season for us around sales and marketing and focusing here as we work with clients. And then in the fall, I this is probably one of my favorite changes is that fall quarter starts August and ends in October. And for me, August is just that season of going back to school. So having a new season start then feels really in line with just my personal clock, basically. But that quarter for us is about new product development. That's when we're launching new products or new services for clients if it's the right fit. And then in the winter is November through January for us. And that's our last quarter of the year. And that is what we really term winter harvesting. This is when we focus on sales and marketing, but we're really wrapping up so many of the interactions we've had in the previous year, but we're starting to onboard clients that we've talked to throughout the year that are now ready to move into that new season for their business. And so it's been this really exciting and grounding change for us to make.
Yeah. I will say that I have not laid out my new quarters and given them pretty names like you have, because I have been onboarding new clients and just really focusing on client work. And I'll share too, there's a lot of talk on social media about, working in your business versus working on your business. And I've been working in my business all of what is traditionally quarter one. And, I think that's okay. It's my job. My job is helping people. And the way that I help them is by thinking strategically and supporting them in the numbers and all of that stuff. And yes, I have a team. Now we have 2 team members. Robin is our financial assistant and Keisha is our director of operations. And they both have responsibilities that support, the work that I do. But I really feel like I want to and should be in my clients' numbers and doing that analysis. And so I had to have a conversation with myself that said, yeah, you're working on client stuff 4 days out of the week right now. And there's not a lot of working on the business, and that's okay because things are moving along just fine and the focus is your clients, right? And so once we get all of the new clients we've onboarded at the end of last year and the beginning of this year into a rhythm, which always happens, things just kind of start moving along. That's the goal, right? That's also my job. Then there comes a capacity in, I think, the middle of the year to think creatively about what new things do we want to offer? What new tools do we want to create? What messages do we want to support people with and all of that kind of stuff. So I can, the seasons are starting to take shape in my head, but I haven't had the space yet. And that's fine because you have provided the insight into you don't need to be doing what everybody else is doing in quarter one.
Yeah, it's really about the self-awareness and the internal awareness around what is the seasonality of my own business, what's my own personal seasonality to life, and how do I make this work for me as a human being, and how do I bring the business along for the right, how do I create that momentum for the business by giving myself that space to really say, you know what, it doesn't fit the mold that everybody else does, but this is what I need and this is what my business needs. And just having that it's a really beautiful place to be.
Yeah. And I think, this is something that you can carve out a little bit of time for. It doesn't have to be a formal CEO retreat. It could be, like I do in my favorite chair with a cup of coffee, and you just create a little bit of time to think through it. And that's, what I hope to do in April. We're planning a company retreat in April in Portland. which is really exciting. And so perhaps we'll think about it in some detail there too. But I'm so glad you were willing to have this conversation with me publicly, because I just think that so many people will benefit from this light bulb, aha, mind shift moment that you had, and that has already been so impactful for me as well. And I want to say that your email is one of my favorite emails that hits my inbox every week. You help people with the production aspect of their business, whether they're, self-manufacturing or working with a co-packer or whatever that might be. But your email is not solely about that topic. It covers topics like this. We're just sort of thinking about your business in that zoom out capacity. So if you aren't already on Ashely's mailing list, I highly recommend it. We'll have links to join and to check out her website available for everybody.
Thanks for those kind words, Sarah. It means so much. And the newsletter is definitely where I feel like I get to connect from that human perspective and share not just where we are as a business and how we work with brands, but also like a part of myself and that relationship aspect that we really value.
Yeah, I value our relationship. Ashely and I try to carve out maybe 2 hours a month because once we get going, it's hard to stop talking. But to talk about like how are things going in our business and what are we working on and what are we looking into the future, to be focusing on, and just sort of like an emotional check-in, a business check-in. And I think as a business owner who's often alone in her home doing the work, it's so beneficial to have someone else who's going through many of the same things or has been in your shoes and situation before to talk through. So thank you for being that for me and with me.
Well, I'm so thankful for that relationship that we have as well, because it gives me life on a monthly basis. And I think for anyone that, doesn't have that person or those people in their life today, like it is really key to just being able to express yourself and also just bounce ideas off of each other and brainstorm together, but get encouragement from one another and cheer each other on. And I think that's what's so beautiful about what you and I get to do together each month, is just be there for each other. And it's really a special gift.
I agree. Well, this has been a blast. I want anyone listening, if this has been like a light bulb moment for you personally, please share that with us. So you can do it I would say on Instagram. Share with us on Instagram. I'm at sarah.delavan.consulting, but you can also use the hashtag #TheGoodFoodCFO. Ashely, do you have an Instagram handle?
I do not.
Okay.
Thank you for asking. Maybe in the future, that is one of those pieces of the business that we're maybe planning for the future.
Okay, super. Well, I promise to share any of the messages that we get on this topic with Ashely during our monthly calls or in between. But I would just love to hear from folks. Like, is this something that you could see benefiting you in your business? Is it inspiring to you? Is it a relief to you to be able to think this way? And if you're open to sharing sort of maybe what your quarters will be, I will certainly follow up and let everybody know what I land on for what my quarterly schedule looks like.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear that, Sarah.
Amazing. Well, Ashely, thank you again. It's always a pleasure. Want to hear more conversations like this with small business owners? We've got additional bonus episodes available only to Profitable Food Business Community members. Membership is free, so if you're not there yet, join us at profitablefoodbusinesscommunity.mn.co.